At this time, I would like to introduce our first very distinguished guest, Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney. Her career has been a series of firsts. She's the first woman to represent New York's 14th Congressional District, which we now know was formerly known as the Silk Stockings District. She's the first woman to represent New York City's 7th Council District and the first female vice chair of the Joint Economic Committee, a House and Senate panel that examines and addresses the nation's most pressing economic issues. In addition to her work on the Joint Economic Committee, she is chair of the House Financial Services Committee's Financial Institutions Subcommittee, which has jurisdiction over the nation's banking system. As subcommittee chair, she's worked to modernize financial service laws and regulations, strengthen consumer protections, and institute vigilant oversight over the safety and soundness of our nation's banking industry. She's also the senior member of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. Without further ado, and to make a couple remarks regarding her bill in Congressman, I'm very pleased to introduce Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney.
Thank you so much. I am really honored to be with you and to join in this effort. We are facing the most challenging economic crisis in my lifetime, and I can't think of a more appropriate time for your Money Bus Tour that is sponsored by the National Association of Personal Financial Advisors and TD Ameritrade and Kiplinger's Personal Finance magazine to go out and tour the country, talk to consumers, talk to investors, and give them the knowledge to confront the challenges before them and to know how to better manage their own money. This has been an incredibly challenging time in Congress. We first began responding to the subprime crisis with a series of actions to modernize the GSEs, to modernize the FHA, and to give them more tools to help them negotiate with institutions and with homeowners to help them stay in their homes. This was followed by a $700 billion bailout. This took 10 days it was 3 pages when it first came to Congress. It ended up being 107 pages, and Congress added oversight, transparency, taxpayer protection, and many additions to really preserve taxpayers' money in this. I am heartened by the knowledge that we heard this week about the Federal Reserve moving internationally with an international effort in response to this crisis. They all lowered the Fed's rate to 1.5, and under the leadership of England and other countries, they are moving to stabilize their financial institutions. I am pleased that Secretary Paulson recently announced that $250 billion of the $700 billion bailout will be going into buying preferred stock, going into stabilizing our financial institutions so that the credit can get out to the businesses, to the men and women working in America. The FDIC has walked up to the plate and raised the protected rate to $250,000 and unlimited for non-interest bearing accounts. This again has provided more stability to our financial institution. But one of the things we have to do is get a hold of the housing crisis. As Secretary Bernanke has said many times, we have to really control the subprime crisis and the housing crisis. And likewise, we have to get the credit out into the community so businesses can continue doing their work. I am too often told about businesses in my community that I have the honor of representing that have always made their interest payments and are having their loans pulled on them, and it is really creating a lot of turmoil in the markets. I truly do believe, and I think this crisis shows this, that our markets really run more on confidence than on capital. And we need to restore our confidence in our financial system. And I believe that we have some of the most innovative and hardworking institutions and people in America. I think that this important tour is going to give people the knowledge, but my Credit Card Holders Bill of Rights will give them the tools to help them manage their money better. But before I talk about that, I want to mention all of the oversight that Congress is taking place now on where we go in the future. Last week we had 2 hearings looking at AIG and Lehman, what went wrong there and what steps we can take to help keep this from happening in the future. Then we are having hearings on hedge funds, the credit rating agencies, and government reform and oversight and regulation. Barty Frank is likewise having an additional hearing on what we need to, steps we need to take in regulating, really, and bringing some stability to the system. But as we move forward with this wonderful trip across the country to inform consumers, we also need to give not only consumers knowledge, but the tools to better handle their credit. And the Credit Cardholders Bill of Rights tries to level the playing field between the card companies and their customers. Right now it's very one-sided. The card company gets to make all the decisions. It's probably the only business in America where their contract says they can raise your rate any time, any reason, and then retroactively put that rate increase on your balance. And so this comes forward with common sense reforms that allow consumers to have more knowledge about what is happening so that they can better manage their credit and their finances. And it bans the anytime, any reason rate increases on existing card balances, and it bans so-called double cycle billing, which charges interest on debt already paid. And it gives consumers 45 days notice of any rate increases so cardholders can decide whether to pay off their balance at the existing rate and then shop for another card. And this will give them a way out. The way the system is now, they can be caught in a never-ending cycle of credit and interest rate increases. The bill makes sure that customers who borrow high-rate balances, such as emergency cash balances, can pay them off by requiring issuers to credit some part of the payments to the high-rate balances. And the bill stops due date gimmicks and tricks that cardholders use to get them into paying late and racking up unjustified fees. It prevents subprime cards from trapping the most vulnerable cardholders in a cycle of debt, and it prohibits issuing cards to vulnerable minors. Unfair credit card debt is as toxic to ordinary citizens as subprime debt obligations are to investment banks. This is an issue that cuts across social and economic groups. Absolutely everyone I talk to has a credit card story, and too many of them are about being hit with an unfair or deceptive practice. Over 50 newspapers have endorsed this bill and published editorials, and the Federal Reserve, whose first priority is the safety and soundness of our financial institutions, has called these anti-competitive practices by the credit card companies unfair, deceptive, and anti-competitive to consumers. They have come forward with rules that resemble almost completely my bill, and over 56,000 consumers wrote in support of this rule change, more than any rule change proposed by the Fed in the history of the Federal Reserve. As I said, we have a battle ahead of us to get this bill passed into law, but with the economic times we are seeing, it is time for us to make sure consumers are getting the help they need and deserve. And there's been a great deal of talk about Wall Street and financial institutions and how we're going to make them more responsible and more credit worthy, but we also need to talk about Main Street and what we're doing to help everyday consumers. This bus tour, this information that they are getting out to consumers is a very important part of it. There'll be other reforms, and one of those reforms is the Credit Cardholders Bill of Rights. Thank you.